We're here again. We're giving you live coverage of the presentation of government's budget and economic statement or outlook for the year 2018 by the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta before Parliament. And we expect him to be walking onto the floor of the House in the next 45 to an hour. We hope that we can also give you a lot more of the preview, just like we've been giving you. We have here seated with us the Member of Parliament for Bali, and he's here. He was a former Energy Minister, Deputy, and John Jinapo is here. Thank you for joining me, John. All right, and energy had been a bane of Ghana over the last 4 years, but we've seen positive stability of power this year. That should be attributed to good management of the energy sector by the Akufo-Addo-led government, would you say?
Well, we had a very positive stability in 2016.
We did?
Indeed, in 2016, there was no load shedding. We had redundancy, we had enough capacity, and we kept putting on more generation. Because the challenges had to do with two fronts, generation and the finances of the energy SOEs. So in terms of generation, even the budget acknowledges that we added close to 1,000 megawatts in 2016 alone. This year, as I speak to you, the car power badge of about 450 is also in the country. And so it tells you that within a very short space of less than 2 years, through our effort and initiative, we brought on board about 1,500 megawatts. And today, Ghana is even signing a memorandum with Burkina Faso to export power to Burkina Faso. It also underscores the fact that the assertion that Ghana's power is the most expensive is false. Because if our power is the most expensive, Burkina won't be buying it. We won't be exporting it to Burkina. If Burkina is prepared to pay for that power, which means that we must then put up a markup or a margin on it, it means that we are doing quite well. The other thing had to do with fuel. Last year alone, we imported about 600 million worth of fuel. This year, that is not the case, because the 10 fields are on, the Jubilee fields are working, and we expect the Sankofa, Jinyamin, Tome fields to also come on. So it means that moving forward, we're going to be much more reliable, much more reliant on our own source of indigenous gas, which means I won't spend more money importing crude oil. On the contrary, the finance side, which we took very positive steps to address, I think that this government is retrogressing on that aspect. One is that we had come up with a model to repay the debt in 5 years. They want to do it in 10 years. And even in that 10 years, they are only dealing with 60% of the legacy debt. Because the 6 billion they intended raising, albeit unsuccessfully, it was supposed to be for 10 years. So that meant that there was a gap of 4 billion. We don't know the plans, the programs that government intends using to deal with the 4 billion. But more disturbing is the fact that even as you deal with the existing debt, this government is piling the debt. And this year we expect close to 2 billion cedis of fresh debt. Ghana Gas is supplied gas of worth about $300 million. They haven't been paid one pesewa, a pesewa. We owe fuel providers. We're still compounding the debt with the utilities, both from the distribution, generation to transmission. And so rather than dealing with the problem in a comprehensive manner, it would appear that we are dealing with the problem in piecemeal manner, adopting a firefighting approach and compounding the problem. This government has been very, very lucky. In the history of this country, this is the only government that has had the highest level of crude oil production since we started oil production. This year alone, we are getting the highest number of barrels. Last year, we got only $247 million from our crude production, because crude oil was at an all-time low. Production in terms of volumes was also low because of the turret problems, and we spent so much money repairing the turrets. But this year, we are generating more, crude oil prices are better, and that is why you are seeing a positive growth rate. But when you split the growth rate, and it's always important that we do that, deal with the oil sector and then minus oil, because it's the minus oil sector that really tells you whether you are doing well or not. That is not favorable at all. And so we're going to subject all this to scrutiny. We're going to look at them and offer constructive criticism. Where we ought to comment, we'll comment. The final issue I want to deal with is with the deficit. The deficit simply looks at your revenues against your expenditure, based on commitment basis or on cash basis. If you look at cash and commitment basis, this government has failed to roll out several of its promises. One district, one factory, one village, one dam, 1 million per constituency, all the other programs you can talk of. They have failed to implement them. And so simply put, if you don't spend, you have a positive deficit. So you are seeing a positive deficit not because there's been some magic, not because there's been so much prudence. It's only because government has decided not to spend. It's as simple as that.
Is that not prudence?
No. If you don't build factories, if you don't construct roads, if you don't construct hospitals, if you don't construct schools, you are debasing the fundamentals of the economy.
Well, that is true.
And eventually you have a major challenge.
Real tent. But if you don't throw all your macroeconomic indicators out of gear, it also puts you on a certain sound footing for the next financial year to be able to realign your expenditure.
That's why.
What the normal interpretation would be.
That's why you must have an integrated approach. Not just look at the macro, but the macro must translate into the micro. And that there should be synergy.
Yes.
That even as you are doing well at the macro level, it should translate. For instance, in the year that you're able to export a lot of crude, you might think that the growth rate is very big. But then the fundamentals are still very, very weak. And so we ought to be concerned about the fundamentals. And that, for me, is critical. Because that is what will create the jobs. If your oil sector is booming, is growing, it's the Talos and the other companies that stands to benefit that much. It doesn't really generate the needed jobs that you need in the agri sector, in the fishing sector, and all those other critical areas that employs the mass of the populace.
And we've seen the criticism against the previous government, a government in which you were part, that many of the agreements we signed as far as the IPPs are, we didn't do that with an intention for having value for money.
It's false. It's false.
And what has been at the forefront has been America.
There's a stalemate. Why can't they take a decision?
You tell me
1
why.
year down the lane.
You tell me why.
Because it's propaganda. Because it's false information. Because people have already made up their mind that they must find faults even before they come into government. And so they are nitpicking, they are fishing, they are net dragging and patrolling, looking for information. But I can tell you, America supplies 20% of today's generation capacity. It's one of the most reliable, there's value for money, and we insist that there's nothing wrong with the America deal.
If we have to go forward as far as managing what we have as far as the capacity is, and now we even want to extend our supplies to Burkina Faso, it also means that other intentions of expanding, let's say under the share program, which was should also be ongoing, shouldn't it?
Certainly. We must have an integrated approach, look at the fuel, and even bring about efficiency. That is very, very important. This government is piling on the debt and still promising to reduce tariffs. When they finish, I will tell you that it's a Trojan horse, and I'll prove to you that, look, you and I should not expect any reduction in your electricity tariff.
Okay. So we have to take a break, and we have to take a break because Mr. John Jinapor has to go into a caucus meeting. But in the meantime, we're still bringing to you live coverage of the much-awaited 2018 Budget and Economic Outlook Statement from the Finance Minister. And so we expect him to be in the next 30 minutes. He will be on the floor of Parliament, and that will be tabled as a motion ultimately. And then when we're ready, they will call the Finance Minister to also come in, to also have the Budget Statement and Economic Outlook read before Parliament. And of course, we are bringing to you live coverage of the event. We've been looking at a lot more of the discussions and the previews. We've been speaking to various members of the other side of the political divide, but also experts. And we also want to have your views. On Facebook, we have, well, we're streaming live, our page, JoyNews on TV. We also have a Twitter handle at JoyNews on TV, and we have a channel on YouTube. And the YouTube channel is My Joy Online TV. Good morning to you. I have a guest here. And, well, we will want to introduce him very soon. And, well, as we do that, we have to take a break. When we come back, we'll have a lot more for you. Do stay on. have with us the Chief Executive for the Public Sector Reforms, and Thomas Boafo. And, well, he has a doctorate too, so I can call him Dr. Thomas Boafo. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Boafo.
Thank you.
Okay, but as far as we're concerned, we need to have a certain outlook and do some discussions around what the projections will be. What do you think should be the ultimate indicators for you that will give you that positive outlook that next year will be different from what it was this year, as far as the indicators for the various sectors are, and what the finance minister is coming to read, what we anticipate, really? Well,
as far as I'm concerned, I look at how the economy was, the situation of the economic fundamentals. We need to build the fundamentals first. And for quite some time, our economic fundamentals have been a very serious challenge. We need to bring down inflation to an appreciable level. We need to bring down the interest rate. We need to bring down the budget deficit. And then we need also to ensure that we accumulate enough reserve to sort out the city, to bring down currency depreciation, and then spur growth, move growth to the level that becomes so sustainable so that it gives us the jobs. It gives us the job. You see, by 2016, Ghana was already a debt-raging country. By the end of 2016, debt to GDP 72.9%, debt to total export revenue 261%, debt to total government revenue 381%. All these things are way, way, way off the benchmark IMF indication of being a hippie country, highly indebted country. We're way, way, way off. And when you look at even our revenue target, it was less than 20%, less than 20%. So it was barely 16%. And if you look at our peer groups, the benchmark median of 22%, we were far below. And when we also look at our debt servicing, we were 35 percentage points to total revenue. That is, all monies collected in Ghana, around 35% were being used to service Ghana's sovereign debt. And for that matter, we were seriously under pressure. If you look at the benchmark indicator for our peer groups, 9%. And our debt to GDP, the benchmark indicator, 56% for our peer group. So we are well below the performances of our peer group, meaning that if we are not very careful, Ghana will generally not become attractive. And that is what we are working towards. Inflation was 15.4% by December 2016. Budget deficit has gone to 9.3%, and it was very serious. And if you look at the growth rate, it was down to 3.7%. From a growth of 14.5% in 2011 to 3.7%, a loss of 72% growth momentum. So it was really very serious. The jobs were not going to come. And if you look at the performances of our various sectors, apart from the oil, the other sectors were indeed suffering, especially the industry, typically the manufacturing sector, where the long period of energy crisis probably might have strangulated most of the businesses. Higher interest rate also contributed to that fact. So going forward, I want to see, even for now, I've seen some improvement as far as the indicators are concerned. Inflation 15.4, now down to 11.6, meaning that we are doing well there. Growth rate of 3.7, now it has picked up by the second half to 7.8%. We are also doing well. The budget deficit of 9.3%. By the second half, we brought it down to 4%, meaning we are also doing well. If you look at the foreign reserves, $4.9 billion was accumulated. That's at 31st December 2016 to cover 2.8 months. And today, we are talking of about $7 billion, covering about 3.5 months of import cover, meaning there is an improvement there. Yeah. Currency depreciation around 6%, 5%, meaning that we are under control if you compare.
But the narrative has been that if you take a look at our expenditure, we've had limited expenditure on the side of some productive sectors, and as a result of that, on the social side, we've had some great expenditure. Yeah. And so as we've not had circulation of liquidity, which ultimately will drive some of the trends like inflation that is relatively to the prices of goods and services, etc. And so that also played positively into the hands of government.
Yeah, it's good. When you have your revenue dropping, in fact, the revenue has dropped.
Then you have to be mindful of how much you
have to be mindful about your expenditure. You must be prudent.
And would you say that is a good mark of a proper effective economic management?
No, that is good. You must make sure that you realign your budget. It doesn't matter what you promise. The economy, the health of the economy is so important to you. So you don't think of, I promised this, I promised that, I promised it. So I will make sure that no matter what happens to the economy.
So government was just being real?
The government was real, and that is better. I expect that as we improve revenue collections, because I believe that business activities may pick up, as we improve all the promises you made, you have 4 years mandate. The first 10 months, or maybe let's say 1 year, if you are unable to fulfill most of them, there are other years that when revenue improve, you may be heading towards. So when you are given a mandate of 4 years, you must make sure that you build sound economic fundamentals before you will be thinking of even your promises. Even for your promises, you only need to make announcement and introduction, and then you consider the legalities, the legal framework to build your promises. Because in Ghana, when you start social interventions and you are not very careful, without proper framework, subsequent governments usually abandon social programs at will, where they not start, so we won't continue. So when you are bringing social programs and those of your promises, you make sure that at least some of these things, you make sure that at least you control your expenditure. As time goes on, when things are better, revenue coming in, then you begin to roll out your program. You have 4 years mandate. Nobody is chasing you. Why do you rush to crash? Is that not it? Sometimes governance is like a journey. 4 hours to Accra, Kumasi to Accra, or it will take you 4 hours from Accra to Kumasi. Sometimes up to Ofanko, it takes you about, because of the go-slow, it can take you about a whole 1 hour from maybe inside Accra to Ofanko. You waste a complete 1 hour in Accra before you even start the journey. But the issue is, it is not how you fulfill those promises. It is how you put in place measures that make those promises sustainable when they are rolled out. And I like the way the government is going.
Well, very soon we'll be having into the discussion, joining us will be a Deputy Minister for Communications, and Kojo Ponkroma, who is also a Member of Parliament for Fuase Ayiribi. And we'll be asking some of the notable questions and critically looking at how we need to perhaps have a buy-in of the ordinary citizen into what really the pattern of expenditure and the management of the economy has been. And really, as we're going to have the Finance Minister coming to Parliament very soon, just I believe in the next few minutes, what really we should be expecting as far as we're concerned. And Kojo Ponkroma is joining me. Kojo, good morning to you. Now, if we just have to make an interpretation of what has transpired over the year, we know the government has been spending a lot more on the social side.
And clearing arrears.
Yes, okay. So, and clearing arrears. That should have other sectors also suffering, relatively. Can I say industry? We haven't shored up industry as we had intended.
Well, so this is how I'll put it. When you are building a house, you start on a foundation.
Well, we do understand that.
Yes, and first of all, when you come and you have all of these macro challenges, the first thing you have to do is to fix them. Else, any attempt at providing stimulus for industry, whatever, will just go down the drain. And predominantly, we have spent a lot of time doing this, and at the same time investing heavily in a number of our major initiatives. When it comes to industry, there's a lot that we have done for industry. Under our IPEP program, which has a one district, one factory component, there's a lot of work that we have done. Currently, we've done over 191 signed off business projects for, I think, about 120 districts that have now reached the phase where they can now quickly get to roll out. I mean, nobody builds a business by just one day having an idea and getting on the ground. You've got to go through your business proposals, have it validated, sort out funding, get machinery, get off-takers, etc. And in 7 months, remember our budget came at the end of March, started in April. April to end of October, in 7 months, we've been able to clear about 191 of them, targeting, I think, about 120 districts. And now, as we get into the final column of the year, and now into the full 2018, we expect now to see a full rollout of these. So I wouldn't say that maybe because you haven't seen the fruit fully blossom out there, we have not intervened in industry. No, we have done as much as needs to be done in the foundation and in other areas, and in these productive sectors as well.
How, as far as the stimulus packages are, would they be perhaps packaged in such a way that there could be easy access for industry in the next financial year?
There's a criteria, and it is important that we follow that criteria for assessing these businesses, for really determining how much they need and making it available to them. If you don't, perhaps I could line up my friends to come and take the money. If I'm in a rush to just disburse, I could line up my friends to take the money. That's not what you and the good people of Ghana want. So we have put in place a procedure mechanism that ensures that the right people who need the right amounts are the ones who get access to it. And if you ask me how, the trade minister, when he gets to the productive breakdown, will outline, in fact, he's outlined part of it at the National Policy Summit. He can do a further one. But for us, managing the broad macro, the important thing is that we have funded that initiative and we have made the liquidity available. And as they deliver on that criteria, we release and make sure execution happens in that area.
At the end of the day, we know that, Dr. Boafo, it gives confidence to the ordinary investor locally to know that the macroeconomic stability that is being enjoyed is going to provide the foundation to propel whatever industrial setup that we want. What other incentives do we need to be giving to industry to achieve that feat?
Well, when you look at Ghanaian industry, for instance, we need energy, sustainable ones, affordable availability must be considered. We need energy. As we work towards cheaper sources and a reliable alternative sources of revenue, then we are addressing their issues. Then the next thing we also need to do is how to link these private sectors, how to link, and the government become a major vehicle for the purchases of most of their outputs that are going to come out. When you roll out programs to help the industry, some of them at the teaching stage, what the government is to do is to at least become a major source in terms of marketing. They will look up to the government. For instance, those who will go into the carpentry industry, those garri processing, those who go into the fruit making, and there are so many other areas, furniture making and the rest, and you have schools. You need school feeding. You must feed them. You buy milk, sugar here and there from them at the very onset. So the government itself is better positioned to become a very strong strategic ally of the industry. Then the another one is also offering free consultancy and advisory services to this private sector, especially the startup ones. In most cases, you can even look at a system of PPP, public-private partnership, where you put in some amount, and as they grow, then you offload, just like you look after a child. At a certain point in time, we're very young. All of us were at the back of our mothers at the very onset. Today, probably I have to carry my mom in some instances. So you need some funding, cheaper sources. The government should be exploring not only Ghana, other areas where the government will find cheaper sources of funding as a vehicle for our industry.
You will find, for example, that under the industrial parks program that we are doing, and next year we'll see through about 3 of those industrial parks, you find that, like you're saying, when you go to Mauritius, there's funding, very cheap funding available for industrial parks. We were just recently at the IMF World Bank meetings, and it's one of the things we've been able to negotiate, so that you get cheap funding to partner the local Ghanaian enterprise so that they can advance in that exercise. Take the Chinese facility that we've negotiated, not as a loan, but to leverage our assets. We are saying that if they can bring us suppliers credit of machinery and sign an off-taker to take the materials we are producing, we will be able to, just grow the basic crops, put them through the machinery, and begin to service. So these are some of the strategies that we are employing. But what I can assure you is that one of the most important things, growth, which essentially determines how widely or how quickly the economy is expanding. Growth in the NDC era came down from about 9% left by President Kufuor to about 3.6. This year, you notice that growth is picking back up again, around 6% plus. And we even project to keep growth on that 6% trajectory for a while now. And if you compare that to the rate at which the population is growing, that means that you have the ability to absorb a lot more young people who are coming into the employment.
And perhaps maybe that's why the president and the vice president, who is the head of the economic management team, will say that this year's budget will be themed a lot more on creating the jobs and the needed access for young people to have. But at the end of the day, I guess one of the negatives will be, well, I don't know whether it's a negative even after all, is that we've had some challenges with achieving the targets for revenue. But if we have to do that realignment and the interpretation of it, is that a bad thing after all, or government has been able to place a tap on it?
Brilliant question you have asked. The first thing to identify is that government set itself a target that we're going to grow revenue by 33% this year. 33% growth in revenue. It was a very bold, aggressive target. And we came up with a number of interventions to achieve that. Yes, we have not achieved it all, but we are not behind by even 10%. We are not behind by even 10%. The latest numbers I saw, and I'm sure the finance minister maybe has more updated numbers, but the latest numbers I saw were not behind by even more than 10%. But revenue is not an end in itself. Revenue is a means to an end. You raise revenue to achieve expenditure objectives. And even expenditure is not an end to itself. You expend so that you achieve policy objectives. So in spite of the fact that we fell short of revenue targets, did we go ahead to spend money we didn't have? No. We have curtailed expenditure, and that is why we're able to bring down the deficit from about 10% to about 6.3% this year. But have we been able to achieve the commitments that we set out to? I'll say largely, broadly, we have been able to achieve a good number of them. We're in a hurry. We are now even being accused of being in a rush. And that if we finish all of these things this year, what are we going to do in the subsequent years? But I think that is evidence that we are being fiscally prudent. In spite of the fact that we set ourselves ambitious revenue targets, may not have met it all, have fallen short, not too significantly. We have been able to hold expenditure and still achieve a lot of our policy objectives.
In that moving forward, it also means that perhaps we have to determine the structure by which we either need to improve the taxation that we have placed on.
That's another brilliant point.
Are we doing it?
Domestic resource mobilization.
Are we doing it vertically or linearly?
Domestic resource mobilization essentially says that we should be able to raise adequate resources to meet our expenditure needs.
Granted.
You have an option between taxing the people more or being efficient with the few tax handles that you have.
Okay.
The previous administration had a penchant for always piling on top of us more taxes.
What are we doing now?
What we are doing is being more efficient in the already existing tax handles. And so this morning, you will not hear the finance minister announce new taxes. You will hear programs to make some of the existing tax handles that are not contributing or yielding much more efficient so that we can raise a lot more money in that space without necessarily burdening the people some more.
Okay, but it also means that it will be the same bracket of the demographics that we're still taxing. How do we expand that? Perhaps going into relatively some high income earning sectors within the informal sector.
There are tax handles that tackle the high income earners, which are not being properly applied. So we may not need to introduce...
Which are not being adequately exploited.
Yes.
Okay.
We may not need to introduce new versions. We just need to be more efficient in mobilizing in that space.
But it is true, we have a section of income earners who may not be captured within the mainstream traceable system, and so have not been captured properly or adequately within the tax net. How do we reach them?
We need to give them education. That is why the GRA is going around. There will be a whole lot of tax education. Of course, there are some that legally we exempt them. Especially those below the minimum wage level. They are not part. But there are others we need to educate them. Now that the national identification system is coming, it's a new innovation. The digital address system is also coming. There are areas we need to explore with a good tax education. For instance, there are some carpenters for which I will specifically do. Somebody can charge 100 million for just roofing a building, a structure. They won't pay tax. Masons, they will pay tax. Some of them, because there is a very large informal sector When you come and look even at the taxi drivers, it is the car owner that pays the income tax. The taxi driver himself,
on his earnings.
On his earnings.
Doesn't pay.
He's not paying. So it's a matter of tax education. We need to educate them. Well, but what do they need to see? They want to see responsibility in the administration of the economy.
So how do we improve that?
Well, like he's mentioned, there are already programs of tax education, tax compliance that are ongoing. And there's also now evidence of a lot more prudence in managing expenditure. If we have been able to restrain expenditure, yet achieve our growth targets, we've been able to restrain expenditure, yet spend on the major initiatives that we spoke about. When we were told there'll be no money to fund free SHS, we've been able, after cutting taxes, to fully fund free SHS. It tells you that we are being prudent in managing the expenses of the country. That's what the president meant when he says we protect the public purse. That alone gives encouragement to potential taxpayers that I know that when I pay my taxes, it will be put to judicious use, and we should continue in that area.
Well, we have to leave you. And Deputy Communications Minister, Kojo Apong-Nkrumah, and also Deputy Information Minister, Kojo Apong-Nkrumah, but who is also the Member of Parliament for Fwansia Yerebi. But we still have the CEO for Public Sector Reforms, and we have Dr. Thomas Kusi Wafo here with us. And but if we have to go mainstream, it also means that we have to go to the next level of making sure that we redeem some of the pledges that were made on the campaign platform, captured in the 2017 budget, but that have still not seen a certain rollout. How steady should government be? Should it be a full force rollout, or we still need to be a bit cautious and make sure that we get the macro stability right?
Yeah, to correct you, the name is Kusibuaf Thomas.
Kusibuaf Thomas.
Yeah.
Thomas Kusibuaf.
Yeah, I don't use titles.
Okay, you don't like the doc?
No, I don't use titles.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, well, some of the promises, you see, in politics, promises have become the order of the day. And they are to be delivered within your mandate.
Yes.
There is no need for you to rush and bring in so many things where you think that you have not been able to mobilize enough. So you have to go and borrow, crowding out the private sector, borrowing from banks here and there, so that at the end of the day, you can fulfill a certain promises. A country is not run like that. What you need to do is that the private sector is an engine of growth. Yes, it is acceptable. And that is where the job creation is going to come from. That is where the job creation is going to come from. And when you look at Ghana, sincerely, the waste is too much. The waste. You must plug the waste. Government awarding contracts. We must look critically about how source sourcing has become a problem of this nation. You must look at that. Source sourcing is a problem. So value for money contracts award alone can free some of the resources that have been moving into wrong pockets. When you do that, you will be gradually be bringing in discipline into the system. Those who pay taxes, they are not good Samaritans. They want something out of it, no matter how rich you are. Apart from Warren Buffett, who brought himself to American economy that, please tax me more. That became Warren Buffett effect, what is called Buffetting. I've never seen any other person seriously volunteering that I have enough and I want to pay more. They want to see the lifestyle of government and government officials. They want to see them. A taxpayer is a very serious social audit. A social auditor. If you have not seen a serious social auditor before, every taxpayer, you want to see accountability. You want to see projects being done. So the first thing is about prudence. As for the promises, you need to roll out the programs. It is not when you promise, then you roll all of them down. It is not like that. Don't lay too many eggs if you think you cannot hatch. You are not, excuse me to say, an idiot chicken. All that you need to know is that every single promise that you put across must be sustained for quite some time for the real benefit. Free education is a major monumental promise. You must make sure that it survives. And if it survives, it will benefit so many people, even if it is not for now, for some years to come. In that case, you must look at the resource base to fund the free education. Not that you have a number of promises, all of them are being rolled out at the same time. Governance is like marriage. If I promise my wife or fiancé that if I marry you, I will buy you a car, it doesn't mean start from day one. Probably it takes some time. So I believe that the only thing is that the little that came, have you been able to use the little amount properly into areas that we think will give Ghana the greater and the maximum benefit? If that is so, then probably you have the money. You can go to them and ask for again. Sometimes to whom much is given, much is expected. It's about tax syndrome. It's a tax system. If you are given a lot, you must deliver a lot. So what we need to do now, as we speak now, going forward, I expect measures that will free private sector. I expect modernization of agriculture. Agric by itself, when you produce only raw state, food getting rotten, and then we have to spend about 1.2 billion importing food that we could have produced locally. And then we even produce chicken parts. Ghanaians importing cow legs and offals from abroad. All these things, we can do them here with good programs. Look at the grasses. You go to the north, Chad and that of Niger, Burkina Faso, where sometimes they have to farm for grass. Go to Brazil, they are farming for grass. Go look around the roadside, even from here to Kumasi. Whoever plant grasses in Ghana here, they come by themselves. So definitely, there are some measures.
You're saying we have the environment to...
We have the environment,
right.
We have the conditions, everything.
Well, we've been joined by John Ntim Fodjo. Reverend John Ntim Fodjo is a member of parliament for Asin South. Thanks for joining me. All right. But during the year, the main outlook for agriculture and the main focus was the planting for food and jobs. There was a rollout, but we've had some hiccups along the way. Would you say there has been